My name is Mason Harris, 32, a business operations specialist at Vertex Technologies. At least I was until yesterday. What happened in that conference room still feels like a nightmare. 3 people I trusted betrayed me in the worst way possible. My sister Emily, my boss Richard, and Trevor, the guy I thought was my best friend. They had me fired, thinking they were getting rid of a problem. What they never knew was that I secretly owned the entire company they worked for. Before I tell you what happened the next morning, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to see how I turned the tables on those who tried to destroy me. Life wasn't always easy for Emily and me. Our childhood was marked by financial struggles and uncertainty. Mom worked 2 jobs while Dad battled health issues that drained our family savings. Despite everything, we were close. I was 4 years older than Emily, and I always felt responsible for her. I was the one who helped her with homework, made sure she had lunch money, and stood up to anyone who tried to bully her. Then the unthinkable happened when I was 18 and Emily was just 14. Our parents died in a car accident, leaving us alone with mountains of debt and no other family to turn to. The courts were considering putting Emily into foster care, but I couldn't let that happen. I fought hard to become her legal guardian, promising to provide stability and keep her in school. Those years were a blur of exhaustion. I deferred my college plans and took 2 jobs, stocking shelves at a grocery store during the day and working security at night. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. Meanwhile, I enrolled in night classes whenever I could, studying business and computer science between shifts. Emily would often find me passed out at the kitchen table, face planted in textbooks. "Mason, you need to rest," she'd say, bringing me coffee. "I'm fine, Em. Did you finish your math homework?" I'd always redirect to her needs. Despite everything, Emily thrived in high school. She was smart, popular, and determined. Every academic achievement, every award she brought home made all my sacrifices worthwhile. We promised each other that no matter what happened, we'd always be a team. During those years, I discovered I had a knack for coding. In my limited free time, I developed inventory management software that caught the attention of a local business owner. That opportunity led to my first startup at 24. For 2 years, I worked relentlessly, building a customer base and improving the product. Emily was in college by then, studying marketing on a partial scholarship, with me covering the rest of her expenses. When a major tech company offered to buy my software for $4.7 million, I was stunned. The lawyers advised me to take the deal, and I did. Suddenly, I had more money than I ever dreamed possible. But something strange happened. I didn't want it to change me or my relationship with Emily. I'd seen how money affected people, how it created distance and distrust. So I made a decision that would later prove fateful. I kept my wealth a secret. I told Emily the company had bought my software for a good sum, enough to pay off our debts and put aside money for her education, but I downplayed the amount. I continued living modestly in our small apartment, driving my old car, and working hard. "Why aren't you living it up a little?" Emily asked once. "You deserve it after everything." "I'm happy with what I have," I told her. "Besides, I'm just getting started." With my newfound capital, I quietly began investing in various companies, learning the business world from behind the scenes. I set up a holding company called Harris Investments, keeping my name off public records through layers of corporate structure. My financial advisors thought I was crazy not to flaunt my success, but something told me to keep my cards close to my chest. 3 years ago, I decided to get back into the corporate world, not for the money, but to learn more about running a large organization from the inside. I applied for a mid-level position at Vertex Technologies, a growing firm specializing in enterprise software solutions. With my experience and credentials, I was hired immediately as a business operations specialist. That's where I met Trevor Phillips. We were in the same orientation group, both new to the company but coming from different backgrounds. Trevor had an MBA from an impressive university and the confident demeanor of someone who expected success. We hit it off immediately, finding common ground in our ambition and work ethic. "This place is just a stepping stone," Trevor told me during our first lunch. "5 years max, then I'm starting my own thing." "Same," I agreed, though my reasons were different. We became fast friends, working on projects together, grabbing beers after work, even joining the same fantasy football league. Trevor was charismatic and well-connected, helping me navigate office politics. I valued his friendship and trusted him completely. 6 months after I started at Vertex, the company went through a reorganization. Richard Bennett became our new divisional director and my direct supervisor. Richard was in his mid-40s, divorced, with a reputation for being brilliant but demanding. He had steel gray hair, expensive suits, and the kind of confidence that filled a room. "Harris, I've heard good things," he said during our first one-on-one meeting. "I expect results, not excuses. Deliver those, and we'll get along fine." I respected his directness and worked hard to impress him. Over time, Richard became something of a mentor, offering advice and challenging me to take on more responsibility. When he praised my work, it felt earned and meaningful. Meanwhile, something significant happened behind the scenes. Vertex Technologies was looking for additional investors, and through my holding company, I quietly purchased a controlling interest in the firm. The board and executive team knew that Harris Investments had become the majority shareholder, but they had no idea that I, Mason Harris, modest business operations specialist, was the man behind it all. I had my reasons for maintaining anonymity. I wanted to understand the company from the ground up, to see its strengths and weaknesses firsthand without the distortion that comes when employees know they're talking to the owner. I instructed my representatives on the board to make minimal changes and to never mention me by name. Last year, Emily graduated with honors in marketing and business communications. I couldn't have been prouder watching her walk across that stage, knowing how hard she'd worked and how far we'd come from those dark days after our parents died. "I applied for a job at Vertex," she told me at her graduation dinner. "Their marketing department is expanding, and it would be fun to work at the same company." I felt a mix of emotions, pride in her initiative, happiness at the thought of seeing her more often, but also a twinge of concern about mixing family and work. Still, I supported her decision. "That's great, Em. Just remember, if you get hired, I'm just another coworker at the office. No special treatment." She rolled her eyes, as if I'd want people knowing my dorky brother works there. Emily got the job, of course. She was smart, qualified, and interviewed well. She started in the marketing department, 3 floors above my division, and quickly made her own friends and reputation. I watched from a distance as she charmed executives and colleagues alike with her fresh ideas and enthusiasm. But as the months passed, I began noticing concerning patterns. Richard, my mentor and boss, seemed to take a special interest in the new marketing team, particularly in Emily. He would stop by their department frequently, something he rarely did before. At company events, his eyes would follow her across the room. At the same time, Trevor's attitude toward me began to shift. His friendly competitiveness took on a sharper edge. When I was praised in meetings, I'd catch a flash of something dark in his expression. When I shared ideas with him privately, they would sometimes appear in his presentations without credit. Small things, perhaps, but noticeable. I tried to dismiss my concerns. Emily was an adult capable of making her own decisions. Trevor was probably just going through a phase of career anxiety. And Richard, well, Richard had always been hard to read. But in my gut, I felt something changing. The foundation I had carefully built, my relationship with my sister, my friendship with Trevor, my professional respect for Richard, was beginning to crack beneath my feet. I just didn't realize how quickly it would all come crumbling down. The first clear sign of trouble came during a department-wide meeting in early spring. Richard was reviewing quarterly objectives when he called on Emily's team to present their marketing strategy. It wasn't unusual for departments to collaborate, but the way Richard praised Emily's ideas seemed excessive, almost personal. Ms. Harris brings a fresh perspective that some of our more seasoned employees could learn from, he said, his eyes briefly flicking toward me. After the meeting, I caught up with Emily in the hallway. Great presentation, I said genuinely. Want to grab dinner this weekend? I feel like we haven't caught up in ages. Emily shifted her weight, not quite meeting my eyes. Sorry, I can't. I'm swamped with this new campaign. Rain check? It was the third rain check in as many weeks. Our Sunday dinners, a tradition since our parents died, had become increasingly rare. When I called or texted, her responses were delayed and brief. Something was off, but I couldn't put my finger on what. Meanwhile, a major opportunity emerged at Vertex. The company was bidding for a contract with North Star Industries, a client that could potentially double our business. Given my background in operations and software development, I was a natural fit to lead the project. I prepared a detailed proposal and scheduled a meeting with Richard to discuss it. It's a solid approach, Richard admitted after reviewing my work. But I'm thinking Trevor might be better positioned to lead this one. Trevor doesn't have my technical background, I pointed out, trying to keep my tone neutral. The North Star contract hinges on systems integration. Richard leaned back in his chair. True, but he has stronger presentation skills. We need someone who can sell this to the client, not just implement it. The explanation made sense on the surface, but it didn't align with past decisions. Richard had previously valued technical expertise over polish. Something had changed. That weekend, I was reviewing the company's financial reports, accessible to me as the secret owner, when I noticed some concerning irregularities. Several executive expenses seemed inflated, and there was an unusual pattern of bonuses in certain departments. Nothing illegal, but definitely questionable. I made a note to have my financial advisor look into it more deeply. The following Tuesday, Emily surprised me by stopping by my office after hours. Hey stranger, I said, genuinely happy to see her. What brings you to the cheap seats? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Can't a girl visit her brother? She perched on the edge of my desk, fidgeting with my stapler. Actually, I wanted to tell you something. My heart rate picked up. Everything okay? I'm seeing someone, she said quickly. From work. It's still new, but it's getting serious. That's great, I said, feeling relieved it wasn't bad news. Anyone I know? She hesitated. I'd rather not say yet. You know how office gossip can be. I just wanted you to know I'm seeing someone, that's why I've been busy. I nodded, respecting her privacy even as curiosity gnawed at me. Well, I'm happy for you. Just be careful mixing business and pleasure. It can get complicated. Emily stood up abruptly. Not everything needs your cautious approach, Mason. Sometimes you have to take risks to be happy. The sharpness in her tone took me aback. Before I could respond, she was heading for the door. I've got to run. Talk soon. As the weeks passed, Trevor became increasingly competitive. When I spoke in meetings, he would subtly undermine my points. Projects we had once collaborated on became territorial battles. When I asked him about it directly, he brushed it off. Just trying to keep you on your toes, Harris. He'd say with that same charming smile, but something had changed in his eyes. Then came the day I discovered the real reason for Emily's distance. I was working late, heading to the break room for coffee, when I heard voices around the corner. I recognized them immediately, Emily and Richard, but their intimate tone made me stop short. He's so controlling, Emily was saying. Ever since our parents died, he thinks he knows what's best for me. He means well, Richard replied, his voice gentler than I'd ever heard it at work. But you're not a child anymore. You have to live your own life. I know. It's just hard. Mason sacrificed so much for me. And now he's holding it over your head, isn't he? Richard's tone hardened. Classic manipulation tactic. I stood frozen, coffee forgotten, as the truth hit me like a physical blow. Emily was dating Richard, my boss. A man nearly 20 years her senior. And somehow, I had become the villain in their story. I backed away quietly, mind racing. The late nights, the missed dinners. The strange tension, it all made sense now. But Richard's characterization of me as manipulative? That stung deep. The next day, I asked Emily to meet me for lunch outside the office. We sat at a small cafe 2 blocks from Vertex, the tension between us palpable. So, I said after we ordered, you and Richard? Her eyes widened, then narrowed. You were spying on me? I overheard you talking. Completely by accident. Emily pushed her salad around with her fork. I was going to tell you. When? After the wedding? The words came out harsher than I intended. This is exactly why I didn't tell you, she snapped. That judgmental tone. The disapproval. He's your boss. He's twice your age. Can't you see the power imbalance there? He respects me. Values my opinion. Treats me like an adult capable of making my own decisions. Her eyes flashed. Unlike some people. I've always respected your decisions. I protested. I'm just concerned about. About what? That I might be happy? That I might build a life that doesn't revolve around your approval? Her words hit like slaps. That's not fair. Everything I've done was for me. I know. Emily's voice softened slightly. And I'm grateful, Mason. I will always be grateful. But you can't keep using that as a license to control my life. I love Richard. He makes me happy. If you can't accept that, then maybe we need some space. She stood up, leaving her lunch mostly untouched. I need to get back to work. I watched her walk away, feeling as if the ground was shifting beneath me. In trying to protect Emily, had I really become controlling? Or was Richard manipulating her, turning her against me? Either way, the rift between us had never felt wider. The weeks following my confrontation with Emily were some of the loneliest I'd experienced since our parents died. At home, I found myself staring at old family photos, wondering where I'd gone wrong. At work, the atmosphere grew increasingly hostile. I noticed Richard and Trevor having closed-door meetings they never mentioned to me, despite our team's usual transparency. Twice I walked into the break room to find them abruptly changing the subject. When I asked Trevor about it, he shrugged it off. Just discussing the North Star project. Nothing you need to worry about. The project that should have been mine. Then came the company-wide email that sent a chill down my spine. Vertex Technologies announces strategic restructuring. The memo outlined efficiency measures, including consolidation of redundant positions in several departments, including mine. That afternoon, Trevor stopped by my desk. His expression sympathetic but his eyes calculating. Heard about the restructuring? Word is they're cutting deep. I've survived cuts before, I said, keeping my voice neutral despite knowing I was likely a target. Trevor nodded. Just watch your back. Not everyone upstairs is a fan. He leaned closer. Between us, Richard thinks you're resistant to change. Might want to show some flexibility on the Anderson account. I thanked him for the advice, but alarm bells were ringing. The Anderson account was solid. My approach had been working perfectly. Was Trevor setting me up to fail by suggesting changes? The next day, I passed Emily in the hallway. For a moment, I thought she might stop to talk. But she merely nodded and continued walking, her eyes never quite meeting mine. The sister who once told me everything now treated me like a stranger. That Friday, I stayed late to finish a report. The office was nearly empty when I heard raised voices coming from Richard's office. Normally, I would have minded my own business, but I heard my name mentioned. Moving closer to the partially open door, I froze at what I heard. Mason is becoming a liability, Richard was saying. His performance reviews don't justify keeping him through the cuts. What about Emily? Trevor's voice. She's still his sister. Richard's laugh was cold. Emily understands the situation. She agrees Mason has become toxic to the team culture. She's okay with her brother being let go. Trevor sounded surprised. She's a professional who recognizes that personal relationships shouldn't influence business decisions. Richard replied smoothly. Besides, she's mentioned how controlling he is at home. This might actually improve their relationship. I backed away, feeling physically ill. My sister had not only failed to defend me but was actively participating in my professional assassination. And Trevor, my supposed friend, was right there with Richard, plotting my downfall. The next morning, I confronted Trevor in the parking garage before work. We need to talk. He looked uncomfortable but maintained his friendly facade. What's up, man? I know about the meetings with Richard. I know you're targeting me for the restructuring. Trevor's expression shifted from surprise to calculated concern. Mason, you're being paranoid. Nobody's targeting you. I heard you both yesterday, discussing how to push me out. If you heard a private conversation, that's on you, Trevor said, his mask slipping. But since we're being honest, your performance has been slipping. You're not a team player anymore. That's bull and you know it, I said, struggling to keep my voice level. My numbers are better than yours across the board. Something ugly flashed in Trevor's eyes. Numbers aren't everything. People don't like working with you. You think you're better than everyone else. Since when? We've been friends for 3 years. Friends? Trevor laughed. We were workplace acquaintances, Mason. Don't confuse the two. As he walked away, I stood stunned, reassessing every happy hour, every weekend watching games, every confidential conversation. Had it all been an act? Or had something changed? The following week, 3 anonymous complaints were filed against me with HR, citing harassment, hostile work environment, and intimidation. The timing was too perfect to be coincidental. Sandra from HR called me into a meeting. These are serious allegations, Mason. We need to conduct a formal investigation. This is a setup, I said, struggling to remain calm. Who filed these complaints? You know I can't disclose that, she replied. But I would advise you to be very careful about approaching any colleagues you suspect might be involved. That could be construed as retaliation. I was being boxed in from all sides. As the investigation proceeded, I considered revealing my ownership of the company. One call to my lawyers and this farce would end immediately. But something held me back, a need to see how far they would go, to understand the full extent of the betrayal before I acted. In team meetings, Richard began openly criticizing my work, questioning decisions that he had previously approved. Mason, this approach seems outdated. Haven't we discussed more innovative solutions? We hadn't, but arguing would only make me appear defensive. I could feel the eyes of my colleagues, see their uncomfortable shifts. The way they avoided engaging with me afterward. I was being isolated, painted as difficult and incompetent. Emily continued her policy of avoidance, but now it extended to company functions. At the quarterly all-hands meeting, she sat with Richard's leadership team, laughing at his jokes, lending her tacit approval to his treatment of me. When our eyes met across the room, she quickly looked away, a flash of guilt crossing her face before she resumed her conversation. The final blow came when I discovered evidence that Trevor and Richard had been tampering with my work. I had kept meticulous records of all my projects, backing up files and emails as a matter of habit. Comparing these with the versions now in the company system, I found subtle alterations, changed figures, removed recommendations, modified timelines, all designed to make my work appear substandard. It was elegant sabotage. The kind that would be difficult to prove without seeming like I was making excuses for poor performance. They had covered their tracks well. As I sat in my apartment that night, looking at the evidence on my laptop, I felt a cold clarity replacing my hurt and confusion. This wasn't just office politics or a personal falling out. This was a coordinated attack on my professional reputation and livelihood. The people I had trusted most had revealed themselves as enemies. My sister, who I had sacrificed everything for. My friend, who I had confided in and supported. My mentor, who I had respected and learned from. Tomorrow, I knew, would bring the culmination of their plan. But they had forgotten one crucial detail. They were trying to destroy a man who secretly held their fate in his hands. For the first time since this ordeal began, I smiled. Let them spring their trap. I would be ready. The call came at 9:15 the next morning. Sandra from HR, her voice professionally neutral. Mason. Richard would like to see you in conference room B at 10 a.m. Please bring your company ID. The company ID request was protocol for terminations. They weren't even trying to be subtle. I'll be there, I said, keeping my voice steady. I spent the next 45 minutes putting personal items from my desk into a cardboard box, family photos, my coffee mug. The small cactus Trevor had given me for my birthday last year. Hard to kill, like your work ethic, the card had said. The irony wasn't lost on me now. Colleagues walked past, averting their eyes. News of a firing always travels fast in an office, like the scent of blood in water. No one wants to be associated with the condemned. At exactly 10 a.m., I knocked on the door of conference room B and entered to find exactly the tableau I had expected, Richard at the head of the table, a manila folder in front of him, Sandra from HR to his right. Her expression professionally blank, and most painfully, Emily and Trevor seated on the other side. Emily looked pale, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Trevor wore an expression of somber concern that didn't reach his eyes. The stage was set for my professional execution. Mason, please have a seat. Richard gestured to the lone chair facing the four of them. I sat down, placing my box on the floor beside me. Quite the reception committee. Richard cleared his throat. We've asked you here today to discuss some serious concerns about your performance and conduct at Vertex Technologies. I assumed this wasn't about a promotion, I said. The calm in my voice surprising even me. Richard's jaw tightened at my lack of anxiety. This is no joking matter. Over the past several months, we've documented a pattern of behavior that violates company policy and values. Sandra opened a different folder. We have received multiple complaints about your conduct, including allegations of harassment and creating a hostile work environment. Specific examples would be helpful, I said. Richard leaned forward. You confronted Trevor in the parking garage, accusing him of conspiring against you. You've made passive-aggressive comments in team meetings. Your project reports have contained critical errors that cost the company time and resources. And most concerning, Sandra continued, you've apparently been making threatening comments about Ms. Harris's personal relationships. I looked at Emily, who finally raised her eyes to meet mine. There were tears there, but whether from guilt or performance, I couldn't tell. Mason, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You've been calling me constantly, questioning who I'm seeing, telling me I'm ruining my life. It has to stop. The lie hit me like a physical blow. I hadn't called her more than twice in the past month, both times just to check if she wanted to have dinner. Both calls had gone to voicemail. That's not true, I said quietly. And you know it. We have phone records, Richard interjected, though I noticed he didn't produce them. Trevor leaned forward, his expression a masterclass in fake concern. Mason, we've been friends a long time. I've tried to help you see that your behavior was becoming problematic, but you've refused to listen. The company has a responsibility to maintain a safe work environment. A safe environment, I repeated. That's why you altered my project files? To keep everyone safe? Trevor feigned confusion, but I caught the flash of alarm in his eyes. I don't know what you're talking about. Richard cut in before I could respond. The fact is, Mason, your performance has been declining steadily. The errors in the North Star proposal alone would have cost Vertex millions if they hadn't been caught. Errors I didn't make, I said. Convenient that they appeared after Trevor gained access to my files. These accusations are exactly the kind of deflection we're talking about, Richard said, a triumphant smile playing at the corners of his mouth. You refuse to take responsibility for your actions. He slid a document across the table. This is your termination notice. Effective immediately. You'll be given 2 weeks severance pay, which is generous considering the circumstances. I didn't touch the paper. And if I refuse to sign? That's your right. Sandra interjected. But it won't change the outcome. Your employment is terminated either way. Signing merely acknowledges receipt. I looked at each of them in turn. Richard, smug and satisfied. Sandra, professionally detached. Trevor, poorly hiding his relief and triumph. And Emily, my sister. The person I had raised, supported, sacrificed for. She wouldn't meet my eyes anymore. Staring instead at her hands. Was there regret there? Or just discomfort at being present for the messy business of destroying her brother's career? Is there anything you'd like to say, Mason? Richard asked, clearly expecting either an outburst or begging. Either would vindicate their characterization of me. I stood up slowly, leaving the termination notice untouched. Just one thing. Remember this moment. All of you. Remember exactly how you felt sitting here today, what you said, the choices you made. Because I certainly will. Richard's smile faltered slightly at my calm. Security will escort you to collect any remaining belongings and then to the exit. Please surrender your company ID and parking pass. I placed my ID card on the table. Keep the box, I said, nodding to my personal items. Nothing in there I need anymore. As the security guard led me through the open office, past the curious stares and whispered comments of my former colleagues, I felt a strange sense of detachment. The humiliation I had expected was replaced by something else, a clear, cold purpose. In the parking lot, I sat in my car for several minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel. 3 years of work gone. My relationship with my sister, fractured perhaps beyond repair. My friendship with Trevor, revealed as a complete facade. I started the engine and pulled out of the Vertex parking lot for what they thought would be the last time. Little did they know, I would be back tomorrow, not as Mason Harris, fired employee, but as the owner of everything they had just used to destroy me. The drive home was a blur of conflicting emotions. Anger at the betrayal. Grief for what I'd lost. But underneath it all, a steely resolve was forming. They thought they had taken everything from me. They were about to learn how wrong they were. My apartment felt unusually quiet that afternoon. Without the structure of work, time seemed to stretch endlessly before me. I poured myself a rare midday scotch and sat by the window, watching the city below. Memories of Emily flooded my mind unbidden. Teaching her to ride a bike in the park near our childhood home. Staying up all night helping her finish a science project. The pride in her eyes when I attended her high school graduation, exhausted from working a double shift, but determined not to miss her moment. We did it, Mason, she had said, hugging me tightly in her cap and gown. I couldn't have done this without you. Where had that grateful, loving sister gone? When had I transformed in her eyes from protector to controlling obstacle? Or had Richard simply manipulated her, exploited our temporary estrangement to turn her completely against me? My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Michael Grayson, my financial advisor and the only person who knew my true relationship to Vertex Technologies. Mason, I just heard. Are you okay? News travels fast, I said, taking another sip of scotch. Corporate grapevine. What happened? I gave him the abbreviated version, the setup, the false accusations, the firing. Jesus, Michael said when I finished. That's cold. Even for corporate politics. It gets better. My sister was part of it. A long pause. Emily? The sister you raised? That doesn't make sense. She's involved with my boss. Romantically. He's turned her against me somehow. Mason, you need to tell the board who you are. End this farce immediately. I swirled the amber liquid in my glass. I'm going to. But first, I need to understand everything that's been happening at Vertex. You mentioned concerns about financial irregularities last month. What did you find? Michael's tone shifted to professional analysis. Nothing illegal, but definitely concerning. Richard Bennett has been channeling disproportionate resources to the marketing department, where your sister works. Approving unnecessary expenses, authorizing bonuses outside normal parameters. Using company money to impress his girlfriend. I translated. Essentially. There's more, though. He's been manipulating project assignments and team structures to consolidate his influence. Anyone who challenges him gets sidelined or pushed out. You're not the first. And the board allows this? The board sees strong quarterly numbers and doesn't ask questions. But those numbers are precarious. He's sacrificing long-term stability for short-term gains. I set down my glass. What about Trevor Phillips? Anything there? Interesting you should ask. He's been meeting with representatives from North Star Industries outside of official channels. Nothing explicitly inappropriate, but unusual for someone at his level. The pieces were starting to fit together. He's positioning himself to jump ship. Probably planning to take the North Star deal with him. That would be my guess. Michael agreed. What are you going to do? I stood up, decision made. Call an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Don't tell them why, just say the majority shareholder demands it. And Richard and Trevor? Make sure they're required to attend. Emily too. Mason. Michael's voice turned cautious. I understand you're hurt, but don't let this become about revenge. This is still a business decision. It's not about revenge. I said, though even I wasn't entirely convinced. It's about protecting my investment from people who have demonstrated they can't be trusted. After hanging up, I called my lawyer, Jacob Steinman, who had structured my purchase of Vertex. I needed everything in perfect order for tomorrow. We'll prepare the documentation, Jacob assured me. But Michael is right. Whatever personal satisfaction you might get from this, remember that these are legal business proceedings. Emotion has no place there. Understood, I said. Just make sure everything is ready. As evening fell, I pored over company documents, building a comprehensive case against Richard's leadership. The financial mismanagement. The pattern of pushing out talented employees who challenged him. The risky shortcuts on client projects. It wasn't just about my personal grievance. Richard Bennett was a danger to the company's future. Around 8 o'clock, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Emily standing in the hallway, hugging herself as if cold despite the warm spring evening. For a moment, I considered not answering. What could she possibly say to justify her actions? But some remaining fragment of brotherly instinct overrode my anger. I opened the door. Can I come in? She asked, her voice small. I stepped aside wordlessly. She entered, glancing around the apartment we had once shared before she got her own place last year. Mason, she began, then faltered. Today was awful. Yes, I agreed coldly. Being betrayed by your sister tends to be awful. She flinched. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. Richard said there would just be a performance review, a warning. I didn't know they were firing you until I was already in the room. And that makes it better? That you only intended to help damage my career, not destroy it completely? I never wanted to hurt you. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Richard said you were struggling, that a wake-up call would help you. And you have been different lately, distant, suspicious. Working all hours. Because I discovered my boss and my best friend were plotting against me. I couldn't keep the anger from my voice. And apparently my sister too. Emily sank onto the couch. I don't know what's true anymore. Richard says you've been sabotaging projects, that your paranoia is making you toxic to work with. But that doesn't sound like the brother I know. And yet you believed him. Over me. Without even asking for my side. She looked up, genuine confusion in her eyes. I tried. You shut down every conversation about work. You've been so secretive. Mason. Ever since I started dating Richard. Because he's manipulating you, Em. Can't you see that? He's isolating you from the one person who has always been there for you, always protected you. That's what he says you'll say. She shook her head. That you can't stand me having anyone in my life but you. I took a deep breath. Trying to break through the circular logic Richard had trapped her in. Emily, think about it. Who was there when you had pneumonia in high school? When you broke up with Jake in college? When you didn't get that internship you wanted? Every time you've needed someone, who showed up? Tears flowed freely down her face now. You did. And in all those years? Have I ever tried to control who you dated? Who you were friends with? No, she admitted quietly. But Richard says people change, that power dynamic shift. Richard, I repeated. Everything comes back to Richard. Has it occurred to you that he might be the controlling one? That he's trying to cut you off from family to increase his influence over you? She didn't answer. But I could see doubt creeping into her expression. Go home, Emily, I said finally. Think about everything that's happened, everything you know about me versus everything Richard has told you. Really think about it. And then decide who you trust. She stood, wiping her eyes. What are you going to do now? About the job? I almost told her then. The words were on the tip of my tongue. I own Vertex. Tomorrow, I'm taking it back. But something held me back. If there was any chance of rebuilding trust with Emily, it had to come from her recognizing the truth on her own. Not from fear of my power. I'll figure something out, I said instead. I always do. After she left, I returned to my preparations with renewed determination. Whatever happened with Emily. Whether our relationship could be salvaged or not, I had a company to protect and people who needed to be held accountable. Morning would bring a reckoning none of them saw coming. I arrived at Vertex Technologies headquarters at 8:30 a.m., dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that had never seen the inside of my business operations cubicle. The security guard at the front desk did a double-take. Mr. Harris? I thought. I was told. That I no longer work here? I smiled. You were misinformed. Please call Mrs. Abernathy in the executive suite and let her know I'm here for the board meeting. His confusion was evident, but he made the call. After a brief conversation, he handed me a visitor badge. His expression bewildered. Mrs. Abernathy says to go right up, sir. The executive floor was a world apart from the open-plan office where I'd spent the last 3 years. Plush carpeting muffled my footsteps as I approached the boardroom, where Mrs. Abernathy, the CEO's executive assistant, waited outside. Mr. Harris. She greeted me with a professional nod. The board is assembled, along with the additional attendees you requested. Thank you, Diane. Is Michael Grayson here? Yes, sir. He arrived 20 minutes ago with the documentation. Perfect. I took a deep breath, straightening my tie. Let's not keep them waiting. The boardroom fell silent as I entered. Around the large mahogany table sat the 7 board members, CEO Victor Chambers, Michael and, looking distinctly uncomfortable, Richard, Trevor, and Emily. Richard recovered first. What is the meaning of this? He demanded, half rising from his seat. This man was terminated yesterday for cause. He shouldn't be anywhere near this building, let alone in a board meeting. Victor Chambers raised a hand. Mr. Bennett, please. Mr. Grayson has called this emergency meeting on behalf of our majority shareholder. Apparently, Mr. Harris is here at their request. That's not entirely accurate, I said, moving to the empty chair at the head of the table, the chair reserved for the company owner. I'm not here at the majority shareholder's request. I am the majority shareholder. The room erupted in confused murmurs. Emily's eyes widened in shock. Trevor's face drained of color. Richard remained standing, his expression fluctuating between disbelief and anger. That's impossible, he sputtered. Harris Investments is our majority shareholder. Named after me, I confirmed, opening the folder Michael slid toward me. Mason Harris, sole proprietor of Harris Investments, which owns 57% of Vertex Technologies. I passed copies of the documentation around the table. As you can see, everything is in order. I acquired my controlling interest 3 years ago, right before I accepted a position in business operations. I wanted to understand the company from the ground up before making any significant changes. The board members flipped through the papers, expressions ranging from surprise to begrudging respect. Victor Chambers studied me with new interest. So the mysterious owner who never attended meetings in person was working in our operations department all this time? Yes. I believe in knowing how a company functions at every level before attempting to lead it. Richard slammed his hand on the table. This is absurd. Some kind of elaborate revenge fantasy because he was fired. There's no way this nobody owns Vertex. Michael Grayson cleared his throat. I assure you, Mr. Bennett. The documentation is ironclad. I've managed Mr. Harris's investments for years. This is no fantasy. The board chairman, Thomas Weston, adjusted his glasses as he examined the papers. Everything appears to be in order. Mr. Harris legally owns a controlling interest in Vertex Technologies. He looked up at me. Though I must say, sir, this is a most unusual approach. Unusual times call for unusual measures, I replied. And recent events have forced my hand. Emily hadn't spoken, her eyes fixed on me with an expression I couldn't quite read, shock. Certainly, but also something else. Realization, perhaps. Understanding dawning that everything she thought she knew about her brother had been incomplete. No, I continued. We have serious matters to discuss regarding the management of this company. Specifically, the conduct of Mr. Richard Bennett. I opened a second folder and distributed another set of documents. These financial records show a pattern of misallocation of resources under Mr. Bennett's direction. Inflated expenses, unjustified bonuses. Restructuring decisions that eliminated valuable talent while promoting those loyal to him personally rather than to the company. Richard's face flushed. This is a witch hunt. I've increased departmental productivity by 30%. Through unsustainable methods. I countered. Short-term gains at the expense of company culture and long-term stability. Not to mention your inappropriate relationship with a direct subordinate. Emily flinched, and I immediately regretted bringing her into it. This wasn't about her personal choices. My personal life is none of your business, Richard snapped. It becomes the company's business when you channel resources to impress your girlfriend. When you fire employees who express concern about your relationship, when you manipulate company structure to consolidate power. The board members exchanged concerned glances. Thomas Weston frowned deeply. These are serious allegations, Mr. Harris. With substantial evidence to support them, I confirmed. I've had my financial team review all transactions for the past year. The pattern is clear and concerning. I turned to Trevor, who had remained suspiciously quiet. And then there's Mr. Phillips, who has been having unauthorized meetings with representatives from Northstar Industries. Planning to take our client and our proprietary systems integration solution with him when he leaves, perhaps? Trevor paled further. I was just building relationships with the client. In restaurants and bars, off the books, without reporting these meetings to your supervisor? Interesting relationship building technique. The board chairman cleared his throat. Mr. Bennett, Mr. Phillips, I believe we need to hear your responses to these allegations in a private session. He turned to me. And Mr. Harris, while we appreciate your bringing these matters to our attention, proper protocols must be followed. I understand completely, I said. As majority shareholder, I request the immediate suspension of Richard Bennett and Trevor Phillips pending a full investigation. I also move to reinstate myself as an employee of Vertex Technologies, effective immediately. With the title of Chief Executive Officer. Victor Chambers, the current CEO, stiffened. Now wait just a minute. Victor, I cut in gently. You've done an admirable job. But you've been planning retirement for months, your words, not mine. I'm offering you a generous transition package and an ongoing role as advisor to the board if you wish. But Vertex needs new leadership to address these issues. After a tense discussion, the board voted. The result was unanimous. Richard and Trevor were suspended pending investigation. I was confirmed as the new CEO. Victor, recognizing the inevitable, agreed to the transition plan. Richard stood up, his face contorted with fury. This isn't over, Harris. You can't just walk in here and... I believe I just did. I interrupted calmly. Security will escort you from the building. Your company accounts have been frozen pending the investigation. As security arrived to escort Richard and Trevor out, I noticed Emily had remained silent throughout the proceedings, her expression unreadable. Now she rose to follow them. Emily, I called. You don't have to leave. She paused, finally meeting my eyes. I think I do. I need time to process everything. She glanced around at the board members, then back to me. All of this. I wanted to go after her to explain, but this wasn't the time or place. I gave her a small nod instead. Take all the time you need. After she left, the meeting continued with discussions of transition plans and immediate priorities. By noon, I had officially assumed the role of CEO of Vertex Technologies. My executive assistant, not Mrs. Abernathy, who remained loyal to Victor, showed me to my new office on the top floor. Standing alone in the spacious corner office with its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, I should have felt triumphant. I had reclaimed my company, exposed those who had betrayed me, secured my professional future. Instead, I felt hollow. The victory was complete but empty. My sister was gone, possibly for good. The friendship I had valued with Trevor had never been real. The respect I had once felt for Richard had turned to disgust. I sat in the CEO's chair, my chair now, and swiveled to face the window. Somewhere out there, Emily was trying to make sense of her world turned upside down. I hoped she would understand. Eventually, that everything I had done for the right reasons. But I couldn't shake the feeling that in winning this battle, I might have lost something far more valuable. 1 month into my tenure as CEO of Vertex Technologies, the company was running more smoothly than ever. The board investigation had confirmed everything I'd presented about Richard's mismanagement and Trevor's attempted client poaching. Both had been terminated with cause. Their company stock options voided. The transition had been challenging but ultimately successful. Most employees adapted quickly to the new leadership, especially when I implemented long overdue raises and benefits improvements. The toxic culture Richard had fostered began to dissipate, replaced by an environment of transparency and collaboration. The North Star contract, which Trevor had nearly sabotaged, was secured under favorable terms. Our stock price climbed steadily as the market responded to our strengthened position and clear direction. By all objective measures, Vertex was thriving under my leadership. Yet success felt incomplete. The corner office with its impressive view couldn't fill the void left by Emily's absence. We hadn't spoken since that day in the boardroom. My calls went to voicemail. My texts received brief, non-committal responses. I had won the company but lost my sister, Then, on a rainy Tuesday evening as I worked late, my assistant buzzed the intercom. "Sir? Emily Harris is here. She doesn't have an appointment, but—" "Send her in," I said immediately, my heart racing as I straightened papers on my desk. Emily entered hesitantly, rain droplets glistening in her hair. She looked tired but composed. Dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, a stark contrast to the polished marketing professional I'd become accustomed to seeing at Vertex. "Nice office," she said, glancing around. "Very executive." "It came with the job," I replied. "Please sit down." She chose the couch by the window rather than the chairs facing my desk, subtly rejecting a business dynamic. I joined her there, maintaining a respectful distance. "I hear the company's doing well," she said. "Congratulations." "Thank you." "How have you been?" Emily shrugged. "Confused. Angry. Sad. Pick an emotion." "I've probably cycled through it." She looked directly at me. "Why didn't you tell me, Mason? All these years, letting me think we were just getting by when you were actually a millionaire?" The question I'd been dreading. At first, I wanted to protect you from sudden wealth. We'd struggled for so long, I was afraid it would change you, change us. Then it just became a habit of secrecy. "A habit," she repeated flatly. "One that let me believe my brother was a regular employee getting fired, not the secret owner playing some elaborate game." "It wasn't a game," I protested. "I never planned for any of this to happen. I just wanted to understand the company from the inside, make better decisions as an owner." "And Richard? Trevor? Was exposing them part of your plan?" I shook my head. "They exposed themselves. Their actions were unethical regardless of who I was." I leaned forward. "Emily, Richard was using company resources to impress you while manipulating you against me. He would have done the same to any employee's family member he wanted to date." She was quiet for a long moment. "I've had a lot of time to think about Richard. About the things he said about you, how he isolated me from you." Her voice wavered slightly. "I think you were right. He was manipulating me. But that doesn't change the fact that you lied to me for years." "You're right," I admitted. "I should have trusted you with the truth. I was so focused on protecting you that I didn't realize I was creating distance between us." I met her gaze directly. "I'm sorry, Emily. Truly." She nodded, accepting but not quite forgiving. "So what happens now? With us? With my job?" "Your job is secure if you want it. The marketing department has missed you. As for us..." I paused, considering my words carefully. "That's entirely up to you. I'd like to rebuild what we had, but I understand if you need more time." "I'm not coming back to Vertex," she said firmly. "Not with you as CEO. It would be too complicated." My heart sank, but I nodded. "I understand. But," she continued, "I don't want to lose my brother. Despite everything, you're still the person who raised me, who was there for every important moment of my life. I'm still angry, but I want to work through it." Hope flickered within me. "I'd like that." We talked for hours that night. Longer and more honestly than we had in years. About our parents, about the sacrifices I'd made, about the pressure she'd felt to live up to my expectations. About Richard's manipulation and the wounds it had left. About my secrecy and her resentment. No magical reconciliation occurred. Relationships damaged by betrayal don't heal overnight. But we made a start, agreeing to weekly dinners at neutral locations, not my apartment, or the childhood home we'd shared, but new places where we could begin building new memories. The following day, I called an all-company meeting. Standing before hundreds of Vertex employees, I shared my vision for the company's future, one built on ethical leadership, transparency, and genuine care for the people who made our success possible. My journey to this position was unconventional, I acknowledged. I believe leaders should understand every level of their organization, which is why I worked among you for 3 years before stepping into this role. What I learned during that time informs every decision I make now. I announced a new company ethics policy, named the Harris Standard, after my parents, establishing clear guidelines for conflicts of interest, relationships between managers and subordinates, and protections for employees who reported misconduct. Vertex isn't just a company, I concluded. It's a community of talented individuals working toward common goals. My commitment to you is to create an environment where everyone can thrive based on merit, creativity, and collaboration. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Even employees who had been loyal to Richard seemed relieved by the new direction. Later that week, Emily called to say she'd found a marketing position at a non-competing firm. "It's a fresh start," she said. "Something that's just mine. I'm proud of you." I told her, meaning it completely. 3 months after taking over as CEO, I received an email from Trevor. Despite everything, curiosity compelled me to open it. "Mason," it began, "I won't ask for forgiveness. What I did was unforgivable. But I want you to know that watching you build Vertex into what it's becoming has made me reflect on the kind of person and professional I want to be. You deserve better from me as a friend. I hope one day to be worthy of the trust one betrayed." I didn't respond immediately. Trust, once broken, isn't easily restored. But the message reminded me of an important truth: people can change, can learn from their worst mistakes. Perhaps in time, I could find a way to acknowledge his attempt at amends. 6 months into my leadership, Vertex Technologies was thriving beyond all projections. We had expanded into new markets, secured major contracts, and established a reputation as an employer of choice in the industry. Emily and I had settled into a new rhythm. Our relationship different but gradually strengthening. The distance created by my secrets had been replaced by a more mature connection based on honesty and mutual respect. She was dating someone new, an artist with no connection to the corporate world, and seemed genuinely happy. One evening, as I prepared to leave the office, I paused by the window, looking out at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the gathering dusk. The view from the top was impressive. But I found myself missing certain aspects of my old position: the camaraderie of the team, the direct involvement in projects, the satisfaction of solving problems without layers of management between me and the work. I realized then that success meant different things at different points in our lives. 3 years ago, success had meant building wealth secretly while protecting my sister. Then it had meant exposing those who betrayed me and claiming my rightful position. Now, it meant creating something meaningful and sustainable, both in business and in my personal relationships. The greatest lesson of this journey wasn't about ownership or control. It was that genuine connections, with family, colleagues, community, matter more than titles or wealth. That vulnerability, though frightening, is necessary for authentic relationships. And that sometimes, losing what you thought was important helps you discover what truly is. As I turned off the office light and headed for the elevator, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. The path forward wouldn't be perfect. Emily and I still had healing to do. The company would face new challenges requiring difficult decisions. But for the first time since our parents died, I wasn't carrying the weight of secret responsibilities and hidden identities. I was simply Mason Harris, brother, CEO, and work in progress. Have you ever had to choose between success and relationships? What would you have done in my position? Let me know in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. Share this with someone who might be struggling with similar challenges in their personal or professional life. Thank you for listening to my journey. Remember that sometimes the greatest victories come after our most painful losses.